Rev up your engine!
So Scotty, does restore work? Okay, for those of you who don't know, restore is one of these additives in your engine oil. It says it rebuilds your engine as you drive with metal and blah, 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 blah. Well, here's the thing. If you had an old junker like a 65 Ford and the engine was smoking like mad, they can actually do something because it's all worn out and the metal particles in it somehow can help seal some of the problems, and I've seen them burn less oil and run better. Don't ever think about putting that stuff in a modern car that has variable valve timing, gasoline direct injection, turbochargers, because the metal formulation in there can clog a lot of that stuff up. Don't ever do that. I've seen people do it and seen them destroy engines on some old junker, or you got an old lawnmower that smokes a lot. What the heck? Give it a try. You know, it's on its last legs anyways, but don't ever use it on any modern car because that metal can get in there and destroy things. So do not use it on any modern type engine, especially the ones that say they can only take 0W16 or 0W20 oil. Don't even think about using that stuff. Gary Gutierrez says, is anti-lock brakes and traction control necessary? I always turn them up. Depends if you know how to drive and where you're driving. Some of the traction control systems and anti-lock brake systems don't work all that well. Like GM over the course of the last couple of decades, they got all these lawsuits against them because their anti-lock and traction control systems weren't made all that well. The software wasn't that good. So a lot of people have sued them. You take something like my wife's Lexus. It's got it on it, and they work fine. I've never had any problems. I've never had any customers have problems with them either. So it really depends on the manufacturer and where you're driving, how you're driving. Because, unfortunately, it is true that computers can react a lot faster than human beings. So let's say you got one of your tires on ice and the other's on dry pavement. ABS system is going to be able to react to it a lot better than a human being. That's just the way that it goes. The computers can think faster than we can in reaction time. That's just a fact. But you have to have a vehicle that it works good on. Like I say, the GM ones, they're kind of crappy. I wouldn't trust my life in one of those. I'd rather be driving with it turned off and drive it myself. And of course, if you're driving on dry pavement, a lot of that stuff you don't even need in the first place. Ice Crutch X7 says, Scotty, quick question. Do you ever think in the future manual transmissions will continue to exist? Yeah, I made a video about manual transmissions the other day. Some places, yes, because there's always people that want a standard transmissions, people going in the mud, farmers going into fields, having a mild dirt road that turns to mud, going into their farmhouse. I mean, there's probably always going to be reasons for that, but in the United States, the last I checked, the figures were 96% of the vehicles registered on the road were automatic transmissions these days. So, but I assume there's always going to be a certain amount of people that want to drive them. They want to tow really heavy weights, and they want to be able to choose the gears, control what gear they're in a lot easier so the wheels don't slip. There'll always be a few. I see that, but I mean, they are close to extinction when 96% of the people aren't using them these days. Allie Rex says, when purchasing a used car, do car regional specs matter? The main problem there is, let's say you buy a car somewhere else, not in California, but you find out it's got the California emissions. That's a big deal because the California emissions one have more emission stuff. They're more complex to fix. They're harder to get them to pass the emissions test in states because they have more stringent laws there. And if you noticed, a few days ago, Trump was tweeting that he said that he was taking the right away from California, that they couldn't make special regulations, that only the feds can do that. So who knows which way that's headed. But my advice, if you're buying a used car and you plug in one of those computers and it says California specs, I'd pass. I'd buy one that isn't. And those little computers always tell when I plug in a scan tool, I can go right to the data system, right to the specs of the car, and it'll say whether or not it's California emissions or just federal emissions on it. That's the law. They have to tell you. Mitchell Rosali says, Scotty, what's your thoughts on air suspension? Well, there's all kinds of air suspensions. When I was a younger mechanic, guys would put air shocks on the back of their cars or pickup trucks so they could lift the back and put more weight in. I knew a guy who was a scuba diving instructor. He did it on his Chevy on the back so that he could pump it up when he put all the scuba diving tanks so it wasn't dragging. They're much more complex. You take Lincoln, Mercedes, they got air, computer, hydraulic adjustable shock systems that use all three systems. And they're well designed. They work great when they're working, but when they break, whew, you can spend $5,000 to $6,000 on a Mercedes changing 4 of them out. So you're talking about big money repairs. And of course, if they use air pressure, eventually the air bladders crack and rip because they're rubber and they leak air. Then you got to replace them, and there's a compressor that works. Compressor will break down, and the lines can rot and break because they're made out of plastic, and they'll often get hard and crack. So they get to be expensive when they get old. On new cars, fine, but as they get older, they can be a royal pain in the butt. Then, of course, there's companies out there that make kits to replace the air suspension with normal non-air ones. So you can pick your poison and that stuff. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.